Well, hey YouTube, it's Petey Twofinger. I'm playing around again. So we built a DOD 250 overdrive slash preamp is what it's called, on a PCB from a company called TH Customs. We built a Demeter copulator with a Vectral here from a PCB from a company called Pedal PCB. We built a Baxendall equalizer, which is 3 knobs. On the layout, they only showed 2 knobs, the bass and treble knob. And what I did, I used a shielded cable, so it's 2. And I had prepared it like this. Usually the output will go to lug 1, and ground will be lug 3, and then lug 2 will be output of a 100K pot. And that's like 90% of pedals, or maybe even more. It's the same thing. The output comes out, it goes to one side of this 100K a pot, the other side is ground, and then lug 2 is output. So at some places they don't even show you that wiring. They just assume you'd know it. Anyway, we also built this mixer circuit, which is, it's got a little bit more going on. All of them, when you see this twisted wire, that's for the power. They all have a similar type of power wire, as you can see here. The mixer circuit, the idea with that is, this is for a bass all-in-one preamp. And rather than just have a bypass switch for the distortion, we're going to have it where you blend in the amount of distortion and it mixes with the clean signal. Now, maybe you could pan out a little bit here so I can talk. One of the things that we may run into is the idea that we're taking a bass guitar signal and we're going to run it into this DOD 250, which is really going to bring it up significantly. Now I realize there's a master volume level on it. And then we're going to blend in the clean channel. So at some point, I may want to boost. It may make more sense to boost up the clean signal to put it in the same ballpark as the overdriven signal for blending them. Now, that depends on how our mixer circuit, which this is a TLO74 op amp. The other mixer circuit that I built was a pair of JFETs, the split and blend, and I am so over JFETs. I hate them. My hate for all things JFETs is like how people are racist. I'm like that with JFETs. I hate LM386s and I hate JFETs, and a lot of it is from my own error. It's me ordering cheap ones, ordering ones with bad pinouts, ordering the SMTs and then fudging the number on the daughter boards. I got one daughter board and I've ordered more. It's 60 days. They still haven't come. So ordered again. They still haven't come. Ordered again. Did we get that stuff from? We did. Because it's the constrictor. It's this compressor came with those daughter boards. Anyway, like I said, taking a regular bass signal on a blend circuit with a way boosted overdriven signal might not, it kind of depends on basically when I'm done and I have everything in the chassis, because it's an all-in-one device. All these circuits are going to go in here with a single lithium-ion power pack. So we've got an input jack, an output jack, a power switch. Here's the power rail. There's a buffer, JFET buffer on the input, and then an auto wah. So like with the auto wah, that signal was really hot. So I installed a trimmer 100K volume control and set that to match more unity and we have a bypass switch for that, auto wah, so we can choose if we want the auto wah or not. That was initially how I had wired the distortion, but with a bass, you really having a blend control where you still have some of the straight signal is what we're going for. You know, I mean, when I'm talking about how we're going to use it, it's going to be with the DOD 250 cranked with a real lot of clipping. You know, like I'm so high, oh love, that type of sound. So today I wanted to talk about test rig, how we test these circuits. We finished working on these at 6 in the morning, and I had some dinner and we went to bed. We didn't test them, but like I said, all 4 of these circuits were built in one sitting, so we did good. I said I'm not going to wire them up, we're just going to populate them. I got done with the first one, I was looking at it, and I started making noises like that, and then I started stripping wires and soldering them on there. So it's done. It is what it is. We just didn't have time to test them. So first off, I want to say getting these is smart. We ordered more today. It was $3.20 for a 20 pack of these on eBay, and these are just small alligator clips. So you solder these on everything. You make a roach clip, you do one of those, and then you have an incense stick so the police don't come. You can clip one of these clips on the incense and save. That way you light it, you know, you're all high, you're going to forget it, and that incense is going to burn up. Where are you going to be then? You know, next in a couple hours when you need to toke up again. So that this idea, you clip one of these on to your incense and you burn a centimeter at a time, and that's enough fragrance. You don't need a lot. You don't, trust me. So yeah, these clips are great. This particular instance, we're talking about the test rig. So I've got an old guitar cable. This is like something that came with a beginner pack. It's a molded cable. You can't get in and operate on it. And the other side of it failed. So I determined that it had failed on this side by jiggling it, pushing it in on itself, and getting it to make connection, and then realizing, okay, it's cracked in here. The inner stinger is cracked. And we cut that off and prepared it, used shrink boot on the, you know, you pull the ground wire, twist that, put some flux on it and solder it, tin it, and then apply a piece of shrink boot on that. Shrink that up and then put another shrink boot over the outer diameter. Then I went ahead and connected a pair of wires. This is like, it's a little thicker. It's like if you take a computer power supply and you hack all the wire off it, there'll be like 4 or 6 smaller gauge wire that's a little longer. That's good for this. I like that wire. So what you end up with is we have 2 of them. We have one, this is a 1/4 inch cable that's going into this Hartkey test amp, which we reserve because we don't want to bother our neighbors. We're good neighbors. It's like 11 o'clock at night. We don't want to be running a bass amp. So during the day or night, if we need to test something, we've got this Monsoon speaker. And this is a little sub. It's called a Monsoon. Any sub that looks like this, they might have different names on them. If you see these at resale and they're not like $5, let's say it's $3 or $1.99, I paid $99 for this. We have 2 of them now. They're great. I got a gray one and I got a black one. And I don't know what the amp or speaker is in these. They don't have a lot of mid-range and highs, but you can play bass through them. You can play guitar through it too. They make great little amps. It's got a single power. Here's the jack. It's like 12 or 15 volts, 1 or 2 amps, something like that. 2.1 amp, I think. And there's another amp in here, a stereo amp, to power a pair of satellite speakers if you want. But I just use this as a little sub, as a little mini bass amp. You could, if you were a bass player and you wanted to make a portable amp, just get a battery pack for this. Meaning a tray that holds 3 18650 lithium ions, and you could with an EQ pedal, you could do really well with that. So the cable that I made that enables us to use this Monsoon, this is what I call a Walkman style cable. It's just an 1/8 inch It's an 1/8 inch Walkman style cable. And so that plugs into the input. And what I did when I built this cable, I took a shielded cable, this white shielded cable, and I joined the right and left channel. And this is more of that computer wire I was telling you of that comes off a power supply. So we have this red alligator clip is to the hot side going to that amp. That's right and left. You can hear me doing that there. Let's see if no, it's not picking it up. And then the ground. So we have the small test amp, the larger test amp for more full, like if we really need to test full frequency. Anyway, the main tool when testing is this, the BLMS box. This is a Argikeen quick and dirty test oscillator. It just produces a tone. So it's got a momentary contact, color change LED, volume knob, and then there's a 1x or 10x for the volume. That's And the idea with this is, when I first started DIY, I would get done with it and I would hook it up to an amp, would hook it up to a guitar, hook it up to a battery, and then I would go, honey, can you hit an A? Just keep hitting an A, and the thing wouldn't work. Pedal almost never works when you first get done, so I would get in there working on it and sweating, putting boogies on there trying to get it to work, laying hands, sweating on it, oil. And after a while, I would be like, hit a D. I'm getting sick of that A, And she's like, I don't know what a D. This isn't a bass, it's a guitar. I don't know. So yeah, building the BLMS or the Argikeen quick and dirty test oscillator is what I always recommend my DIY buddies. I always go, have you built one of those yet? No, man. Or, yeah, I built one and I don't know where it is because they didn't put it in a big chassis. You got to have it and I'll tell you what, man, battery lasts forever. These things are awesome. I use them all the time as a signal generator. So it's got a 1/4 inch jack on both sides, an 1/8 inch jack, and then there's actual speaker terminals. So you can get audio out of this all different ways. Right now I have it hooked up to this cable here, and this is how we test. We're finished. We've got this. It's an EQ. It's got a shielded cable for the output. So basically what I did, the ends of it, you have the hot and the ground, and they're like that long. So the hot goes in here, and then I extended the ground with a little heat shrink, and then put that, connected it on the ground. So we have the hot is hooked up here, going into that cable, and then the ground is extended. So coming up to this volume box, this was not on the diagram. They just expect you to kind of know how to wire it, and that's why I'm going over it. And it's the same on 99% of guitar pedals. This thing with the shielded cable is kind of funky the way I did it, the way I do it a lot. But I'll tell you, right now I'm just applying some flux because I'm going to tin these leads. What I did and what you do, you run the output of the audio from the circuit board to pin 3 or pin 1. I think it's pin 3. It's the one, if you're looking at it, it's on the right. So the output goes in there on 3. The ground is on 1, and then your output for the pedal, sound output, is coming off of the volume pot, lug number 2. So it's usually a 100K logarithmic pot. So they call that a 100K A. And the way that more than not that they're wired up is lug 1 is ground, lug 2 is output, and lug 3 is the input of the circuit, the output of the circuit, And more often than not, that will be wired through a true bypass switching type of idea. But for this representation, this board, last night, I cut in some wire for the input, a little green and yellow combo wire. Green is the ground, yellow is the input. And on the output, same thing, green and yellow wires, just little baby strands for speed testing. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate. We've got our Monsoon. This is our test amp. So we hook this up to the output, which is lug 2 of the 100K pot, and then the ground, respectively. Here is the circuit's input. So I'm going to go ahead and get this shielded cable that I made, my test cable. I will keep this set of cables together along with my troubleshooting cable, which I will show you as well. So now we're hooking up the input, and this is being hooked up to the test tone generator. So we turn that on. And lastly, the power. And this is another one of the little clippies with a battery lead. This is just a battery snap. Highly recommended. You can also do 2.1 mil DC, like a regular plug that you would see on a one spot. You can make these cables. You just order these, order 10 of them for $1. You know, it's, if you're into this stuff, it's good for you to order it, have it just in bulk. So there we hooked up the power. We have nothing. Oh, I didn't turn it up. Okay. So here's our bass control. And we're not going to really be able to tell bass because this is more just mid-range. That's why we're going to test it with an actual bass guitar in a minute here. And then here's our treble. We should be able to hear that. Yeah, it's responding. The thing about that Monsoon amp, I mean, I'm showing you and I'm telling you, oh yeah, it's a good little test rig, but that's more for not bothering the neighbors. Something like this amp is kind of loud. So I don't use it all the time. I use it sparingly. And we'll go ahead and hook the CQ up. Hook the ground up first. That's better for safeties and quietness. Ooh, there we go. Volume pot works. You can hear the bass doing something, but wow, that high frequency really opens up at the end of that pot throw. This is the Baxendall EQ. Baxendall, and that's from Frederick Legion. Frederick Legion, Lexion or something. He's got kind of a unique or ethnic sounding Swedish last name. Frederick has his Parasite Studios website, which is awesome. So here we have the EQ with a bass. You can hear the treble is really cooking. Treble all the way down, treble all the way up. Mind you, I've got the tone wide open on this bass. And the bass control is all the way down. I'm going to carefully turn. You know what? Let's set this treble to a scene level and carefully adjust the bass. I'm going to hit an A. So yeah, it's working. Volume all the way down. So there you go. That's how I do a quick test setup to test one of my circuits. I don't like having it really like a really fouled work area with a lot of clicks and pops and the thing falling down. I've done it like that before, where your guitar cable is running up to the device and pulling. You can see here how I have this going through a hole. It's through a hole and it's not pulling. It's really not pulling. And I much prefer to do that where the circuit isn't going to pull and fall down on me, or crackle and short and smoke out or explode the battery or power supply. I've seen some real doozies. I've seen people doing this stuff, and I've done it myself. I don't want to say, oh, I'm perfect, and every time I do it, I mean, I set this up for a video, so you can imagine that it's going to be kind of more neat than it is messy. But, ooh. So yeah, that's the Monsoon, and I gotta vouch for that thing. It's a killer. It's a killer little. We're gonna jam on the patio with it. So when we get done with this preamp dealio, I'm gonna definitely share that with you guys. If you bear with me for just 1 second, I've got my shorts on. Forgive me for that. I'll show you I've done a video on this already, and this is a really indispensable part for troubleshooting when you build something and it doesn't work. This is another mini amp that I use all the time. This is a first act. This is what I break out when I have a problem, and I sit it on its side next to me and muffle it, because I don't want to hear that. So this here is the troubleshooting tool. It plugs in here with you build this yourself. It's just a long run of wire with I have a female 1/4-inch jack. It could have a male jack to plug into your test amp. And on one end it has a ground cable that you clip onto the ground. Connect that to the ground, and then this is the probe. Now for the signal you really need to inject a test tone, so we'll hook our oscillator up, and then with this that's my input, so you can go along and test at various points, testing on the op amp, on the input, and that will narrow it down to where the problem is. So this is a really helpful tool, and the only thing with it is there's a small capacitor that lives in here, and that is to block voltage. It's an AC filter cap, or DC filter cap, excuse me. And so when you build that, you want to look up a test probe, and then you can build this. It's just a lower value, like a 104, 103, I forget, 10N, 1.1, one of those. But yeah, this is pretty much the test procedure of hooking all this stuff up. Like I said, I have a pair of these 1/4-inch cheap cables that I've spliced roach clips on the end. And then it's nice to have your dollar store battery for testing hooked up to a 9-volt clip. And having a test amp like this trusty Harkey is great, but having this little pea shooter, this tiny one, and the Monsoon for a bass rig, that's going to be nice, because there's no bass frequencies on it. This is too much, and the neighbors hear it. So that Monsoon is kind of like a Goldilocks thing. It's going to give me a little bit of bass. I'm not saying that this is like it's an awesome thing. It's going to give you so much low end. It's a PC speaker subwoofer. Now, I've played bass through a good amount of those. I've tested them out to see which one handles a bass guitar, and usually they don't. They're awful. That Monsoon one, it takes a bass guitar really well, better than any of the other ones that I've played around with. So I want to be frank I'm not saying that, oh, SWR Workman's Combo, or, it's garbage. You don't need a tube amp. You need the Monsoon. I'm not saying that, okay? This is a pea shooter test amp rig. It's something you could take backpacking or take to the park on a summer day, and it would fall under the better than nothing category, in that ultimately that's at the cream of the crop of better than nothing. It's a really good one. It handles the bass really well. If you had something like an EQ, a preamp, you would definitely need, because it's really a low level. You need to boost your bass up really high, and then something to be able to tailor those low frequencies so you don't rattle the speaker out so much. That being said, it handles a lot of lows. It's a good little unit. I love that Monsoon. I love my RG Keen Quick and Dirty Test Oscillator. Is absolutely awesome, and that is how I test my circuits when I'm finished with them. So all this stuff, eventually it's going to end up in this preamp, this box here with a singular power supply, 318/650s, which runs at 12 volts. We got the LED installed. We got the input jack, the output jack, a power switch. There's an auto wah, thanks to Pink Jimmy Photon, and a buffer. So I got to go through and test the rest of this stuff, and then we'll be mounting it all up in here and seeing how it comes together in the future. Hopefully when this thing's done, it's going to be awesome. I think it will. We're looking pretty good. We've got just a couple more things to test, but confidence is fairly low on the mixer amp, so we may have to rebuild that one. All right, you guys, we'll see you soon. I'll keep you updated on this project. I think we're just going to call it the BP9000. Is it a bass preamp? Is it a bass multi-effect? The answer to both of those questions is yes, it is. It's not a multi-effect in the traditional sense of the word, but in the sense that it's got multiple effects in it. It is, because it's got the auto wah, it's got the distortion, it's got the compressor, it's got the EQ, it's got the blend. So I think it's just kind of an advanced preamp. It's a preamp with some effects in it. It's the BP9000. How's that? Sound fair enough? I'll see you guys soon, and peace.